Hello, I am Ian Chili Earn, and in this presentation, I will reflect on my experience completing two original news stories focusing on my writing process, fact checking efforts, challenges faced, and the improvements I made in this assignment. So, to overview my work, for this module, I produced two news articles focusing on how rising living costs affect university students. So, the purpose of my first article was to highlight the financial struggles students were facing or are facing, especially since many students do not have a stable income. And for my second article, the purpose shifted to showing how students respond to these challenges, particularly and especially by taking on part time jobs. And this allowed me to present both the problem and the response of students facing this issue, making my overall coverage a bit more complete. And so, as I want to talk about my approach and choices, I chose to use student interviews as my primary sources. Number one, because it's easy and because it made the stories more relatable and realistic. I also used a simple and direct writing style to make sure everything was clearer and just ensures clarity. But however, I now realize that I could have included more external sources earlier to strengthen my reporting. And next, to talk about the verification of context and facts. So, to verify my context and facts, I conducted interviews through WhatsApp voice messages. Uh, Number one, which is to meet the requirement that I needed audio recordings for my interviews. And number two is it allowed me to capture the responses more accurately. And yeah, I ensured that both interviewees were uh, individuals who are related to the topic, and I managed to obtain their signed consent before using their statements. So next, I want to talk about the strengths in my first article. And my first article followed a clear news structure, which includes a headline, lead, and the body, which includes supporting quotes. The topic was relevant, and the ideas were organized in a logical flow, making it easy to understand. However, my first article had several weaknesses, which was that the conclusion was a bit too general and did not really provide any deeper insight. And I relied only on interviews without including any like statistics, other references, or any other opinions from a different point of view. So, which limited the depth and credibility of the article. And the perspectives from my sources were also quite similar. So, I probably needed a new, sort of different perspective from like someone outside of maybe someone that's not a student. So, yeah. And so let's talk about my article two. In my second article, I improved by including an expert source, which is from IKIM, which added more depth and credibility to my writing. I also presented more balanced perspectives, showing both the benefits and challenges of part time work. And the topic was also now more focused, highlighting how students respond to rising costs. And despite these improvements, I did make a significant mistake by accidentally repeating one whole segment of my article, which was initially intended to be, I just wanted to swap around some stuff, and I mistakenly did not remove one whole part after I uh, copied it on top. So, and this really affected the whole article and really messed things up. And this is due to me rushing my assignment and I didn't really pay attention to the details properly. And another thing was that my lead was also a little bit weaker compared to my first article, which I've noticed also. And as it was too basic and it was less engaging for readers. And there were also minor formatting issues such as the the place line and the mistake in general. So yeah. So what went well for my whole assignment and what did not go well? So overall, my writing was pretty clear, and I used quotes effectively to support all of my points. I also showed improvement in the depth of my second article, as the writing showed more explanation. But I need to improve my editing process, pay more attention, and expand my research beyond the interviews I conducted. So what I would do differently is if I were to do this again, I will include more data and multiple sources to strengthen the article's credibility. I will also spend more time proofreading to avoid all the silly mistakes and focus on writing uh, stronger leads and conclusion. And so, what have I learned from this assignment as a whole is that this experience taught me that journalism is not just about writing clearly, but also about verifying my information, adding depth to the writing, and ensuring accuracy and fact checking everything, of course, through proper editing. I definitely should remain alert when I'm finishing up my article and not make any careless mistakes again. So, as a final reflection, in conclusion, I showed clear improvement between my first and second article, especially in terms of depth and balance. However, I also learned that attention to detail and accuracy are equally important in producing professional news writing. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you for listening.